Professor Schetter. I'm sure there will be many questions from the floor. But because I hardly ever get a chance to raise my own questions, there's no time left. So I want to make a few observations to set the tone for this discussion. The point which you made more than once is that the problem of bringing about social change in Pakistan. I think there are very few countries, underdeveloped or developing countries in the world, in which there has been so much social change as in Pakistan. I have lived long enough to see this change. You are relatively young, so you probably do not see it from my perspective. It is estimated that within the next few years, 50% of Pakistan's population is going to be urban. For a country which started with a rural population of just overwhelming about 80%, maybe 85%, having 50% population in cities is a big social change. It's stereotyped way. The biradari system, the feudal system, why don't you concentrate on how these systems are broken down? How so much change has come about in traditional power relations. Go into the field and you'll see the change. The change is there in every way. You see the change in the position of women in Pakistan. What bigger social change can there be? Especially in the urban areas. Now you can tell me that there are these examples of horrific attacks on women. That doesn't mean that there has been no social change. There are terrible attacks on women in the West. I can make a long list of them. I'm not defending those attacks. But you have to look in the overall situation and see how it has changed. And especially with respect to markets. You talked so much about economies. With respect to how the relationships in the markets have changed in the rural and in the urban areas. So I think that there has been an enormous change in Pakistan socially. Now there are some other things also which you said which I don't agree. But I'm not going to now raise them at this stage. We can take them up later. I think it's just a problem with the way Western scholarship looks at these regions. You talked about Malaysia and Indonesia. Well, let me say that the progress that was made in Malaysia and Indonesia was at the cost of human rights. Nobody can overlook that. They were cruel governments, which threw hundreds of thousands of people out of their mainlands so that they could build these world-class and world-class cities and urban areas. So I don't think that anyone can say about Pakistan that any development has taken place, except maybe in the private sector, at the cost of human rights in the country. These are my initial observations. If there is time, I will make more. But I am opening the discussion to the floor. The lady over there. No, that is a gentleman.
Hi, guten Tag. I had a question in respect to a comment really. You mentioned two gentlemen, or a lady and a gentleman, as a part of the German-Pakistan relationship. But I would like to also mention there have been two others. Subhash Chandra Bose was one of the premier fighters for independence of India together, and the German government at that time assisted in that cause. And we should not forget him in his efforts. And as well as, more importantly for this country of Pakistan, is one of our own founding fathers, who was a German, who was a Jewish German, who became Muslim, Leopold Weiss, who became Muhammad Asad, and became the director of the first department of this country, the Department of Islamic Reconstruction. And then of course played a very integral role, became the plenipotentiary for the Pakistan government in the United Nations, and so forth. So these two gentlemen also played, especially Muhammad Asad is very integral to the state of Pakistan. But I just wanted to ask, you mentioned two things. One about the Central Asian trade with Iran. And you said that Germany has obviously played a very important role there as well. Is there any way that the German government would give some political support, economic support, to maybe create an economic corridor between Pakistan and Iran in that way? Because we do deal with foreign policy issues that affect the Pakistan-Irani relationship. And what would be the German government's role? And the second question is in dealing with, you spoke about better relations with India. And as you know, Kashmir is such an integral issue of this country. It's been mentioned in the United Nations. Where is the German government stance in respect to that territorial integrity? And I understand the nationalistic aspect of it, but on the international forum, it has been acknowledged that Kashmir is a very important issue and it should be settled in a certain manner that was agreed internationally. And what is the German government stance on that? Thank you.
आप कुछ कहना चाह रहे हैं?
मैं जो कहना चाह रहा था वो आपने
Any other question? So, she's one of our researchers. We've got an all-women's team of researchers. There are no men in the research.
First of all, it's really nice to have you here and having your opinion about Pakistan's neighbors. But as you were talking about the economic innovation and economic change in the region rather than focusing on the security, how do you think by neglecting the security or putting it behind and focusing on the security in a region where you have such...
No, it was not a question.
A comment. Yeah, but you're completely right. I think you're completely right. And this is where I addressed in the beginning, I have to really shy away because you know the country much better than I do. And this is perhaps you can also have a kind of a Western ignorance, and I'm completely right because I think
You concede too easily.
I think what is what I find interesting now, traveling in the region since 30 years, and you're sure that this was quite overpronounced to say there's no social change taking place. But even if you compare it with some of the neighboring countries, Iran, India, you see.
India.
Yeah, no, if you go to India,
India has got so many backwaters and it has got so much poverty that I don't think it is a good comparison.
okay, then I will not want to talk about India. I just can tell you that I got many students, PhD students from India, which are doing research. And what is interesting, what you see that in several facets of society, you see tremendous social change. But I think that this is something where I see more the comparison with the neighborhood. And I completely agree with you that also India has many backward regions. Completely agree with you. I think, thank you very much for mentioning all the other linkages. I just mentioned here two because it's the most famous one. And thank you for mentioning Mohammed Assad. But I think that, but I find it's important that also always to remember, to recognize that there's also a historical fundament for this relationship between Pakistan and Germany. This has to be mentioned time and again. I understand the question about how we should think about economics because we are so much caught by the security issue. This is what is all the time in our mind. But the same is also true if you go to Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, they're also always talking about security. And I think, but it's a kind of a vicious circle, because thinking about security, you will never reach an end situation of security. Security is something which is going on. You can always talk about security, always talk about insecurity. There's not an end in itself if you talk about security. And sometimes I got the impression that there's a talk about security, but something else is meant, to hide something else. And I think we have to be much more should much more think about what we mean if we talk here really about security. If, again, a taxi driver asked me for a higher tip because of security reason, is it the key, is it the reason or not? And I think there's so much excuse for when security is used as an excuse. The other thing is that, and this perhaps, Europe is perhaps a good example for, that in Europe, over the last 50 years, there was little talk about security. There was a lot of talk about development, about economics. There was a trust in the neighborhood. And the whole global development over the last 50 decades is based on this. The ones who are gaining in the whole globalizations are the ones who are trusting their neighbors and their partners. The ones who are not trusting are ending up just very at the bottom. So the only chance to be partner in this whole global processes, and you can't avoid it to beats. But if you want to do so, then you have to partner up. Yes. Then you should not focus on security. Then you will only end up in somewhere down the drain. I think this is the main mental problem we see here in many countries. And if you see around, so the countries are just saying, okay, from today to tomorrow, I trust my neighbors because I can be sure that they don't want to harm myself. Even if they're kind of a long-standing hostility, they will in the end come up as the winners. Best example is Germany and France. 100 years ago, the situation between Paris and Berlin was much worse than the one between India and Pakistan. But with the European Union, it started to change, to shift this completely. Today, both countries are really very strong partners. This does not work. I'm afraid that Pakistan is in a situation that it will be always being caught in this vicious circle. India not interesting. India not. India is seeing itself on a level like China, like Brazil. It's much economically speaking much more powerful than Pakistan. I think it's the face-to-face to just see the numbers. And also, I think currently, and this is something where we have to think about, that India is a much more attractive market than Pakistan. And Pakistan has to do something to be much more attractive for international investment. I think this is really a key problem. And so somehow, and this is for good or for bad, the reputation of Pakistan is much worse than the one of India. And I will not say that it is right. Again, I'm very much in favor, always feel an ambassador for Pakistan. But here, Pakistan has really to work on its own reputation.
Dr. Salma?
Guten Tag. It's nice to have you here. I'm Dr. Schetter. My question is, you earlier mentioned that Pakistan should not rely on China that much because it's all the politics, economic politics in this region. China might, change the policy in the future. But Pakistan cannot even rely on the Western friends like the West, the Europeans and the Americans. And since 70 years of independence, we are stuck in a vicious circle. Can you give some? Can you tell us how to whom to rely?
Yes.
Simple question.
You want another question?
Yeah.
Dr. Sir? You remember what it's...
Thank you, dear Professor. It was very informative and thought-provoking lecture by you. I am from the
States advice to have as much as possible connection to all the other states, to be as open as possible. If you are now, it's like a card game. Yeah, if you know just or like any other, if you just believe there's only maybe 2 or 3 partners. You put everything on one card. If you got 20, 30 partners, it's much easier to find your way in the future. This is why it's so important to open up cooperation in what kind, what intensity, it doesn't matter, but to open cooperation by to survive in the next decades, to be here coming out of the winners of the next years are the ones who are cooperating. I think this is we know very clear from game theory, political science. It's becoming very clear. The ones who are ready for cooperation are the ones who will win.
Thank you, Doctor, for a very enlightening talk. I'd like to start my comments with a small anecdote. When God Almighty was making the universe, the angels came to them and said, you have made such beautiful fields and roses and fruits for all the people, mankind. And God said, just wait till I give them their neighbors. So, if you look at the predicament Pakistan is in for the last 30, 40 years, till the late 70s till now, and you will understand what neighbors means. Before I go ahead and flag a few issues, I would like to remark over here that irrespective of how the people in the West see, sometimes through the prism of Afghanistan, Pakistan, or through other prisms, Pakistanis always look at Germany and hold them in a very high esteem. And that has been a stable feeling throughout these last many decades. So I would like to highlight that. But coming to the second point, you mentioned about geoeconomics and geopolitics. I think what the professor was referring was the new great theme that is emerging in our region, where 2 decades ago it was unthinkable that India and the US would be so close allies. It was not thinkable that in the heart of Asia conference, the Russian envoy would be speaking for Pakistan. So there's a great shift. And once you're talking about geoeconomics, you're also talking about China, the containment of China. And how does containment of China come into being? Perhaps these new alliances and these new allies give us a clue how things are shaping up. And if that is shaping up, then comes the importance of CPEC. Is it only Pakistan that is not doing enough for CPEC?
Open, very frank to you. For what I learned in this mountain game, there were the same topics and the same habitus I could observe it 20 years ago. The question is why we don't see any change? We always ask the other why they should not change. If there's a kind of a, if you feel somehow offended, like in America and the Heart of Asia Congress, we are always on both sides, on all 3 sides, also the ethnic, no, better. Everyone is directly emotionalized. Why? Sometimes I feel it's good just for one moment just to relax and say, okay, this happened. Be cool. Be self-confident. And this is what I'm often missing here in the region. This kind of self-confidence to say, okay, we know who we are. We don't have to get that by any kind of offensive argument. We don't have directly to feel affected, emotionalized. I think this is the art of diplomacy. Just to say, okay, this happened. It doesn't matter to me. If you reach this ground, you are able to escape this blame game between I'm the victim or I'm the aggressor. I think this is something we are always here in that region. You're always caught in this victim-aggressor game. And as long as you play on this game, this all will continue. The art of peace research is to step out here, to step out of the circle and to say, okay, for one moment, and this is just for 5 minutes, to say, okay, I don't get emotionalized. I just see it how it works. And this gives you, but this you can only have to do with self-confidence, about know who you are. If you're knowing this, then I think you're one step further than the other. And the other has to think about what happens here, what's going on, why I offended him, and it doesn't work. The game doesn't work anymore as it worked in the past. Now this is the clue of peace, and this is what we observe very often. This is the way our European Union was established. The way that you don't take each of offenses as something that you don't have to play direct the ball back. If you're doing this, you will be caught for the next 100 years. You can do this. But if you want to get out, for one very moment you have to step back and to think about, cool down. And I think this is something where, and I think now again we got a situation that now that heated debates on both sides of the border in India and Pakistan. It's always the one who is coming out as a winner, who is the first one who steps back and says, okay, I cool down. I think SARC is very important. I think SARC was lost ground about the last decade. It could be much more powerful. What we can see is completely paralyzed, particularly by all these conflicts we find in the region. And again, I think in SARC, the economic development is again one which would be way out here. And again, another thing is, we are talking about politics. If you talk on the civil society level, in Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, wherever, the people come very good along with each other. We had a student program in my former institute where we had students from all these countries, and we could see that often the students from Africa had much more trouble with each other. The one from South Asia just came together and just had the same jokes and same music, and were very unique with each other. So I think that there is this is important, there's a common cultural social ground for cooperation in the society across the whole region. And I think this is what gives me hope for the future. And I think often my impression is that society is more wise than politics. And I think here we have to use much more society. The society is the one who can bring change. And they're completely right. If you talk about social change, then in the end, my hope is for the society that they can bring social change.
The last question to that young man over there. You want to ask?
Yeah, I want to.
Because you are young, I will.
Sir, thank you for speaking. My name is
Sawali
Jamil.
puchhega bas.
My name is Jamil Aslam. I am from Federal University. My question is that German government get loans and aids in 1950s from Pakistan. After 9/11, Pakistan is fighting for NATO against terrorism, and we are facing many distraction. Can German government and EU give such facilities for Pakistan like German government get Marshall Plan from USA after World War II? Is there any facilities for economic and political or education based?
Good evening, everyone. Sir, you said about the reputation of Pakistan and something, but I think the basic problem of the Pakistan is education. If the literacy rate will be high, so everything will be fine. The reputation, the literacy rate, the sectarian killing. So that's all. So we have to just focus on our education and our system. And you said about Malaysia. If you look through our history, from 1999. Malaysian great leader, Dr. Muhammad Mahathir, he contributed a lot. So I think from their independence day till now, we are lacking of a great leader. We didn't have a leader like them. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So you were just asking for a Marshall Plan for Pakistan after no.
German government gave Marshall Plan from USA after World War II.
Yeah.
We are facing terrorism for NATO.
Second World War in which 30, 40, 50 million people died. We don't want that.
Nevertheless, the gentleman has right that Pakistan was suffering a lot from the war on terror. I think this man has always.
We lost 180 Arab dollars.
I think that it's very important also to mention and to acknowledge that also Pakistan was here, also contributed to the war on terror and also became to a certain degree victimized. I think that if you take the war on terror, I think of course Germany was not a huge player. I think this was something particularly stipulated by the Americans. If I would be an American scholar, you should ask me this question, not as a German one. But nevertheless, I think if we talk about this kind of the future and if there's a kind of investment, I would say yes, but that's not only in Pakistan, but in the whole region. Again, I would say, okay, yes, let's do it. Let's do this kind of Marshall Plan. But then include Kashmir, then include Afghanistan, then include the whole region. Would Pakistan be ready for doing this? That's the question. Yeah, but I think there would be many European countries, the Americans, the Japanese, and so on, who would really seriously think about it if you would come up and say, okay, we will solve the Kashmir conflict, we will solve the Afghanistan conflict, the Balochistan conflict, and so on. If you are giving us the funds, it's just a question of political economy. I think that we are a great step forward. So I would like to ask you, and I shouldn't do this. This should be done by the people here. Come up with a plan and approach then the politicians. I think they would be happy to get this kind of plan. The other thing, I can only agree with you. I think education is so important. And here, if you just compare Pakistan with other countries, Pakistan lost ground. And it really has to enforce it. It needs a really huge agenda, education agenda, starting really with the elementary school up to the universities on all levels. I don't want to, I know it's tricky to say, but if you're looking back to Pakistan histories, in the 1950s, 1960s, you had a very broad intellectual spectrum. And I'm always afraid that this intellectual life is getting lost in Pakistan. In fact, always, as here in this venue, many bright people, but in the size as you had it 30, 40 years ago, it's in my eyes gone. I think we need a kind of a new search for education in Pakistan on all levels.
Thank you, Professor. Really delightful talk. And I'm very grateful that you took the time to, I know that you're leaving tomorrow and you have a very short time at your disposal, but you found the time to come and interact with us. And I hope, you've been so often to Pakistan and you've traveled all along the Indus, so you probably know one from the other. The other point is about, you're right, in diplomacy you have to stand back and be cool. But the Kashmir problem and the West's attitude to it is something that is very heartbreaking for us. You can say that, you can cool down, but I remember that in the time of General Pervez Musharraf, when he went to Agra, he moved back many paces, but it led to nothing. It led to nothing. He moved back many paces. He was willing to give. So everything has been mooted. Having an independent valley, distributing the rest. There have been so many formulas on Kashmir. But the hard fact is that Kashmir is written as a part of Indian territory in the Indian Constitution. Pakistan has not written Kashmir as a part of its territory in its constitution, but the Indians have. So how one can, and the other thing that is very startling is the wave of fundamentalism in this region. It's not just Islamism, there is a wave of Hindu fundamentalism in India, the result of which we are seeing in the attitude of the Indian government and its spokespersons. Like, who is it who said recently that Pakistan will break into 10 pieces? I mean, does one say that? Does one say these things in diplomacy? So these are facts that we live with. And of course we all agree there should be education for Pakistanis, not for any other reason except for peace. But political issues are so strong. We should all have education, but we have seen that educated societies have fought. In our own region, in Sri Lanka was very educated. Its literacy rate was up to 95%, 97%, but look at their long war. They fought among themselves. Let us turn to your own country. Your own country, before the Second World War, Germany probably had the highest rate of education. But there was this war, wasn't there? So these are hard political realities which we must face. And then you say, and you're not the first scholar to say that, then you say, and you rightly say it from your perspective, that Pakistan is probably putting too much into CPEC, and that China is going to follow this policy in its own interest, but all countries do that. When you gave us aid, when the West gave us aid, it wasn't for any, it was not as charity, it is because it needed to build us up in that Cold War. So these are realities which we must live with, and scholars like you and maybe pseudo scholars like me don't have too many answers. But we do try. We do try to pin these issues so that there can be a further discussion on it. However, thank you ever so much for coming, and do come again to this institute. Maybe we can have a smaller gathering where we can thrash out these issues in over a longer period of time. And as I told you, this is the oldest think tank in Pakistan. It was established in 1947. So next year we are going to celebrate our 70th anniversary. And this journal, Pakistan Horizon, we'll be publishing unbroken without a break since 1948. This is our latest issue.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately in German, but...
No, but we will add it to the library. But you write it.
I will do this.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and please serve behind the auditorium.
Ma'am, why didn't you invite him to the conference?
Just that my good friend Marvin was here. Later. Yeah, I met him.